Theobaldo on X, I saw your question about has the war permanently damaged Dubai and Doha's neutral safe hub brand? And Muzammil followed up the question with, what would it actually take for Gulf states to break from US hegemony? Qatar and the UAE believe that this war has exposed very existential threats to their states. These are small states that can only survive with the support of a foreign power. What I mean is, the Qataris built their defense infrastructure on the Al Udeid base by the Americans. 1996, they bring in the Americans to point the base at Saudi Arabia to prevent any scenario by which Saudi Arabia can swallow up the Qataris, whether culturally or militarily or the like. The UAE likewise did the same. UAE using the British and the Americans in order to point towards the Saudis and say, we will not be swallowed up by the Saudis, they may be the big brother, and even leveraging the Americans to say to the Saudis, don't look at us as little brothers, otherwise we'll bring the American bullets and the American guns and we'll point them at you. And there is a notorious leak once of a recording where Hamad bin Jassim, the former Qatari Prime Minister, discussed with the Americans the idea of splitting Saudi into 5 different states. He was saying that's what the Americans were planning, and that perhaps even, he didn't say this, but the suggestion was that Qatar, UAE and these other nations might support the carving out of Saudi Arabia, meaning I would rather carve Saudi into 5 different states than ever accept a scenario by which Saudi Arabia leads in the region. That's changing slightly in Hamad bin Jassim's rhetoric, where he's come out and said that this war with Iran shows that we need a regional security order and Saudi should be the one to lead. The Qataris and the UAE are pursuing 2 very distinct approaches. The blockade in 2017 demonstrated to the Qataris that they could not entirely rely on the Americans. So they brought in the Turkish military base. When they brought in the Turkish military base, the popular narrative is that that Turkish military base at least prevented the scenario by which Saudi Arabia invades the Qataris. The problem, however, is that after the blockade, the Qataris had to choose between expanding the Turkish military base, which is what Erdogan wanted, and between restoring the pact with the US by saying to the Biden administration that, okay, it was Trump's fault, but you will protect us and you will look after Al Udeid. And the Qataris took extra precautions by giving money to Jared Kushner and his investment fund. In the event that Trump wins again, they won't be caught off guard again. They will be able to use and leverage that money. Didn't really work, but in any case, to leverage that money in order to secure that American protection if Trump comes back to power. The Qataris, UAE and Saudis are all invested in the Larry Ellison's Warner Brothers takeover in order to try to find some way in which they can keep at least some ties with the Israelis and with the Americans to ensure that protection. The point is, when the Qataris were asked to choose between the Turks and the Americans, they chose the Americans. Some of it had to do with the idea that there are some sensitivities that sometimes the Turks, they treat the Qataris like a cash cow. But in any case, they refused to expand the Turkish military base and they restored the idea of the Americans at the center. Now that the Americans have failed to protect them against the Iranians, Qatari media is in overdrive in pushing or entrenching the Iranian narrative in the hearts of millions of Muslims around the world. And we've seen the clips and the reports of very eloquent speaking Iranians coming out and asserting that Iran is the victim of all that is taking place. And even some clips saying that Iran has never harmed the Arab states, which is false. When you look at what Iran has done in the region to the other nations, it's categorically for Iran. There is a reason why many of the Arab states consider Iran a threat, and it's not just to do with competition for hegemony. It does have to do a lot with proxy Syria and things that the Iranians actually committed as opposed to the rhetoric being said. The Qataris are essentially saying to the Iranians that, look, we've leveraged our media in order to deliver your narrative to the hearts of millions of Muslims who are now on your side. Therefore, go easy on us in the aftermath. If war breaks out again, don't hit us. Go hit UAE and these, but don't hit us. That we, the Qataris, who are feeling this existential crisis, we're willing to, maintain those ties with you. Qatar is playing a balancing act between the Americans and between the Iranians, and that's being shown. The UAE are doing the other way. The UAE are saying that because the Americans haven't protected us, what we need to do is double down on our support for the Israelis. Let's get the Israelis. If the Israelis, as long as we maintain our ties with them, they can, and we entrench them in the region, the Israelis will always get the Americans to back us. We will influence America through the Israelis, which is why the UAE helped to facilitate the normalization between Somaliland and Israel. The idea being is the UAE are saying to the Israelis, come to Socotra in Yemen, come to Somaliland. I, the UAE, will give you, the Israelis, the ability to have a military presence on the Red Sea. I will give you a military presence on that particular strait, and in exchange, you ensure that I am able to access American support for what I want to do in Yemen or in Sudan or in Libya or in any of these other places as I go and fight these Islamist influences that threaten to topple my government. The UAE's policy, whereas the Qataris are trying to cozy up to the Iranians, the UAE are cozying up to the Israelis and entrenching them in the region and giving them access to set up military bases in the region. The reason why I start with this is the UAE and the Qataris are aware that if they cannot find a way to navigate these superpowers, they'll be swallowed in the infighting between them. That's the nature of how these smaller Gulf states have to operate. And that's why I think that the image of them as a neutral safety hub or safe hub has been damaged significantly, but they are trying to recalibrate themselves as indispensable to bigger powers that want to achieve their aims in the region. Qatar is saying to the Iranians that, look, I'm not exactly on them. I can help to facilitate the soft power that you want to spread into the region. Just please don't hit me. And the UAE is saying to the Israelis, don't let me lose. Don't let me get swallowed up by Saudis. Don't let me get hit by the Iranians. And I promise to entrench you in a way where you cannot be kicked out again. I'll give you that base in Somaliland. Disaster. In any case, does it actually matter economically? I think it does matter economically. I think that the countries are deeply reliant on LNG and oil exports and the like, but it remains to be seen how these new supply chain structures will follow up. Muzammil's question when he says, what would it actually take for Gulf states to break from US hegemony? When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ died, he didn't appoint a successor. And as he didn't appoint a successor, there are reports that before, as he was dying, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala an, was asked or was told by one of his relatives, go to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and ask him who will be the leader. And some reports, and this is even in Shia reports, Ali ibn Abi Talib turns around and says, La wallahi, I will not ask the Prophet ﷺ. And when he was asked why, he said, because if I ask him and he says a name other than me, then the people will never follow me. They'll take it as a prophetic injunction that Ali ibn Abi Talib should never be Khalifa. Radiallahu ta'ala an. The Prophet ﷺ dies and doesn't appoint a successor. Everybody's in a bit of a hysteria, and then Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu stands up and he says, whoever worshipped Muhammad, let him know Muhammad is dead. And whoever worshipped Allah, let him know that Allah is alive and Allah will never die. Then the issue came about, how do we handle who should be the next leader? So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala an, as the relative of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they appoint him and they say to him, you take care of the funeral burial. We've heard that Ansar are gathering the people of Medina to appoint an emir. We're going to go to them so we can be part of those discussions. You handle the funeral rites so that the Prophet ﷺ is not left unburied. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala goes for the funeral rites, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu and Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu and the other Sahaba, they arrive and they are with the Ansar. The Ansar, they turn around and they say to the Sahaba, to the Muhajirin, they are Sahaba, the Ansar. They say to the Muhajirin, they say to the Makkah, that given we need to choose a leader, let's choose a leader from us and a leader from you. An emir from us and an emir from you, and these two will rule together. Umar al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala responds and he says that this is not a good method of governing, having two leaders. And if we should choose, then it is better that we choose somebody from Quraysh. The reasoning was that Umar al-Khattab said that the other tribes of Arabia that might be unruly, they might accept following somebody from Quraysh, but they may not accept following somebody from Aus and Khazraj. An awareness of the geopolitical situation at the time and adapting accordingly in order to choose a ruler. And then from the Ansar and the Muhajirin, they decide together, we'll appoint Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. He's from the Quraysh, which means the rest of the tribes are more likely to follow him. We, the Ansar, love him because he's the best friend of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Umar al-Khattab says, Wallahi, I would gladly follow Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. I would never dare rule over him. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq becomes that leader. In the Gulf states, the Arab states, everybody wants to be emir. But emir, they want to rule together. When Al-Mansur, one of the most legendary generals in Andalusia, who was the de facto ruler of Andalusia, when he died, he divided power between his two sons. He made his two sons the de facto ruler. And according to historical reports, one ends up getting assassinated under dubious circumstances, Sancello and these others, and then it starts and that from the appointment of these two, a civil war takes place in which Andalusia goes from being one united kingdom to 32 taifas. Harun al-Rashid, who ruled over Baghdad in the Golden Age era, when he dies, decides to split the power again between two sons to let them rule together. They end up clashing with one another, and it leads to the decline of the empire together. The problem in the Gulf states when you talk about reduction of US hegemony is, The Gulf states have two choices. Either they unite behind the common leader, and this could take many forms. I remember one of my, somebody who has significant influence over my own thinking and thoughts is, he's a lecturer actually in a university in Ankara in law. His name is Dr. Emir Kaya. He was my tutor at university, and then we became very close friends later. Emir Kaya once gave a theory. We were sitting once upon a time in Turkey, and he said to me, he was thinking of doing a paper on establishing a rotating caliphate. I said, what do you mean a rotating caliphate? And he said, the idea that you establish like an EU-esque government where you have the individual states, but you have like an EU commission or EU government, and you have a rotating caliphate. So every year, like 1 year it's Saudi, 1 year it's Turkey, 1 year it's, each time a country is taking the presidency of that. So you have like a supranational institution that is primarily focused first and foremost with free movement, free trade and the like, until you normalize the idea of free trade and free movement, and then maybe possibly it will take on a life of its own, and that will help to unite the ummah once more. In other words, taking the OIC to the next level. I thought this was a fascinating idea. But in any case, the Gulf states, and in the Muslim states, the Gulf states in particular, the only two choices in reality, geopolitically and pragmatically, are these. Either one emir from us, one emir from you. That Umar al-Khattab said will never work, that it is a disastrous idea. Or they agree to follow one leader, even if it is in a rotating caliphate, as Emir Kaya once suggested. The Gulf leaders prefer that not only will I not follow one leader, but if any of you, my brothers, try to be the leader, wallahi, I'll bring the American bullets against you. If any of you try it, any of you, try to be the leader. If any of you try to sit slightly higher, if any of you, if the world says that you are the leader, wallahi alladhi la ilaha illahu, I'll bring the American military bases and the Israelis against you. Don't even try it. I would rather rule over my small kingdom than ever entertain the possibility of being part of something bigger. Everyone assumes that the issue is it's foreign influence coming in and they are causing the divisions. But a colonizer cannot come in without a collaborator. Colonizer cannot come in without an environment that allows it. Not all of them may be collaborators. Some of them may be seeking protection from another brother, bringing an outsider. Some people like to convert to do the tafsir of the ayah. إلا أن تتقوا منهم تقى لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين ومن يفعل ذلك فليس من الله في شيء إلا أن تتقوا منهم تقى ويحذركم الله نفسه. You ask what's the biggest obstacle? It's not energy, it's not dependency, it's not security guarantees, it's not dollar reserves, it's not succession politics. It's, I want to be king. And if I cannot get the authority or mandate from my people, as in the case of Pakistan or these others, I'll get it through an international mandate. If I can't get it through the elections, I'll get it through Trump and negotiate peace with the Iranians. And that's why sometimes people say you're not as harsh on Western governments as you are on Muslim governments. That's not the case at all. It's rather, if I was to say to you honestly, is America doing anything unusual in its support for the Israelis? Is America doing anything unusual in its support in this war against the Iranians? Are they doing anything strange based on what you've read in their history? No. Who's doing the strange thing? The Muslims who have a way of life that tells them what is better, but they choose that which is not better.